Hi guys, welcome to this session on Microsoft Excel. In this module I want to go through some of the most common functions in Excel, must know functions as far as I'm concerned. So the first sheet that I'm looking at is the sum function, SUMIF and SUMIFS. The second sheet is the count function, COUNTIF, COUNTA and COUNTIFs. So I'm going to go through each one of these and a few little extras as well over the next few minutes. So back to sum. Let's have a look at this one first of all. To add a list up, let's get to the bottom of this list. Now to use the sum function, you can go to the ribbon and you've got sum here, little drop down. You don't need to click the drop down. I see loads of people doing that. If you just want sum, you just click that. You've also got it under formulas there. Same thing. Don't drop it down. If you're just going to do sum, you can just click on sum. So I tend to just use it on here. The key command is the Alt key plus equals. And because you're at the bottom of a list, it will pick up this list. You have to check that this is the correct list. D2 to D13. That is correct, so I can click the tick. You can press enter if you want. But when you press enter, it just comes down one cell, which is okay if you're not going to pull this across or do anything else with it. But there's a total. If I change that top figure, the total picks that up. Now to do a running total, it's slightly different, and we need to incorporate a new feature that I'll just talk about here. So I want to, as I pull this down, I want this to be adding these two up and then adding these three and then these four and so on and so on. So to do that, I've got to use the sum function and have a little. So it's coming up with sum D2, but I need to get in there. Now I can do that up there or down here, whichever, it doesn't really matter. And I want to just do a colon, so which means that's the range to D2. So D2 to D2 basically. So when I click that, it's still going to say £50. But what I have to do on this D2, and again I could do it in there, is I need to lock this, because when I pull this down, I still want the range to go from D2 but keep going up one, so that'll go to D3, D4, etc. when I pull it down. But just watch this. When you press the F4 function key in Excel, it puts $signs around a cell reference, which means lock it, keep it in place, make it absolute. It's a technical term. So if I click that, tick, nothing looks like it's changed. But when I pull that down, that has now added those two up. And if I click onto that, so D2 is locked, but now that says D3. And if I keep pulling that down, a few more, click on that bottom one, it's now down to D6, so D2 to D6, that's what that is. And then I'll pull that down right down to the bottom, and that gives me the total so far, the running total, which is the same as the grand total at the bottom there. So it's quite a nifty little feature, that one, locking that cell. Now another sum function is a SUMIF. This is where you want to work out how much you've spent per category in this example here. So you've got gas spend, car, water, electric, food. I need to add a few more categories in there because it's all just going to be the same. So if I just copy these down, so we've got some duplicates there. So now it's going to summarize each one of these. So each time it sees the word car, which is twice, it will add them both up. So 542 and 56. That's what the SUMIF function will do, and it will do it for each category. So I use this for my household expense, and it works like this. Notice I've put a little table at the top there, so I can have the categories across the top, and then there will be figures, and then you can do a little graph on that, a little pie chart if you want. So this one is equal SUMIF, open the bracket. It's asking you for the range. The range is going to be that range, comma, the criteria. So I could put the word gas inside quotes and that would work, but because I've got a little table, I can just click on it like that. And then what am I adding up? I'm adding up this. Close the bracket, click the tick, and then that will work. So it's added that up, so I need to put that into pounds. Now the problem I've got here now is the way I've done this, if I pull that across, I'm just going to get an error message, well not an error message, a blank pound sign, because the cell references have moved across. I do want the middle one to move across, K1's correct, but these two now are not looking at the right column. So what I'm going to do is I could $sign this, highlight that and lock it with the F4 key like I just showed you, or what I'm going to do is use a name range. So I'm just going to highlight these two titles, highlight that area. So I want the computer to name this list item and that list cost. Now to do that, you need to go to the Formulas tab, and then you've got this little tool in the middle where it says Define Names. Create from Selection. It's picking up two options. I don't want the left column. I just want the top row. Click OK to that. And then just to check it, if you highlight just the data, not the titles, it'll say that in the name box. So this one should say cost, which is always a good check to do. So now if I change this formula, so instead of that cell reference there, if I go and say item, so look down item, and when you find whatever's in J1, add up the cost. Well, now if I tick that, same answer. Not the same answer. J1, no comma. Deleted the comma by accident. Same answer. And now I can just pull that across to each of these categories, and it works for me. It's only one item of electricity, £34, and there it is. And then you do a little pie chart on that if you wanted to. Insert pie, little 3D pie. There's your little pie chart for your household expense. Don't need the title, so get rid of that. Let's push that up, and then I normally just delete that and add data labels, and then format data labels, and put the percentage on, take the value off, and leave the category name on, so it now says what it is on the doors. That's what I like. Close that, and there you go. So that's your little pie chart for your household expense. So you need to get rid of that car, and you need to ring them up, spending too much money on that. So the next one is SUMIFS with an S. So that's just one criteria. This is, you want two criteria. So I want basically to add up which course and location. So for every Excel course in Newcastle, I want it to add the figure up. So there's one. There is only one. So Leeds, one. There's only one for Leeds as well. Let's change that to Leeds, so we can add them up. So what you do here is you're going to use the criteria. So I want a list of courses in this box and a list of locations in that box. So what I'm going to do is do data validation and add the courses in there. So go to the data tab, data validation, and then we want the list option. Now you can select a list, but I'm just going to type the list. So this is courses, so it's going to be Excel, comma, Word, comma, Access. That's all I want. There's only 3 in there, isn't there? Yeah. Okay, and then for this one I want another data validation. This time it's just going to be the locations, which is a bit longer list. So let's go for Leeds, comma, Glasgow, comma, Manchester, comma, and Newcastle. That'll do. Okay. So now let me just do the SUMIFS function. So it's equals SUMIFS with an S. Open that. So it's asking for the range first. What's the range? What's the criteria? So the criteria is if that list is equal to what goes in courses, which I'll put something there in a minute, and comma, this list, comma, is equal to what goes in location, and again I'll put something there in a minute. I want you to add it up. So close the bracket, click the tick. Comes back with nothing because there's nothing in there, but if I go Excel in Leeds, it then adds it up. Pretty cool, that. So if I go for Word in Leeds or Access in Leeds, it's just pulling this information from there. So that's SUMIFS. Now all of these are very useful and commonly used in Excel. Now the next set are the count functions, so let's go for that one. So we've got a list of purchase orders here and invoices that should match those. So at the bottom, because they're numbers, you can use the count function. So if I click underneath this list and go equals count, open the bracket and then highlight the list, it'll tell me, I should close the bracket but you don't need to, tick, there are 7, and then when I pull that across there's only 5, so that tells you straight away that there's some numbers missing, which is what the count function does. Count does, it actually says when you go to the little drop down next to auto sum, it actually does say count numbers, but when you click on that it doesn't say count numbers here, it's just a count function. Now if you wanted to add a list of count names, you can't use the count function because it only counts numbers. So watch, I'll do it first off and see what happens here. So if I click in there and go equals count, highlight the list, everything's okay, click the tick, get a 0. It's not having it because you have to use this count A function. So if I just put an A after that T at the top, when I tick that, it will count that and it will count that. Count A is what you need, and it will also count if I put a number in there. It's basically counting if there's anything in the cell. I'll just undo that because I don't want that. So it's a little bit more flexible, count A. I could use count A there, it would still work. So it's a bit more flexible because it's going to count whether there's anything in the cell. Now COUNTIF, my favourite function on the planet, is basically you want to count how many people are in each of these departments. So we've got 1, 2, 3 sales people. So in there I'm going to go equals count if. So the range is going to be this range. The criteria is going to be sales for this first one. Click the tick, comes up with 3. Now I've got the same problem that I had with sum. The SUMIF function, when I pull that across, it's changing the cell references. So what I'm going to do again is highlight these two, go to formulas, create from selection, just want the top column, top row, just check that that's been called staff and that's been called sales department even. So now I can change that. So we're going to look down department, comes up, I'll just type a little bit and then you can double click on it, click the tick, still get 3, and then pull that across to the other 2. Don't have to worry about the $sign. So if you're used to $signs, that's great, don't worry, you can still do that, but I think when you name columns or ranges, it makes it a lot easier, plus people can read it. Now COUNTIFs is similar to SUMIFs, but this time we are counting how many managers, for example, are in the sales department. So we'll do the formula underneath there. So equals count ifs with an S, open bracket. So the criteria range is going to be that list, comma, and then the criteria is going to be that manager. And again we can do the data validation, which I haven't done on this one, but comma, I will do in a minute. The second criteria is this list, comma, and that's the criteria. Click the tick. So there's one manager in the sales department. Now if I go and change this to the data validation option that we used on the other one, data validation list, so we've got, I'll type it again, manager, sales rep, and assist 3 people. So if I change that to sales rep, there are 3 sales rep in the sales department. Now again I want to change that to a data validation list, so I'll go back in there, any value list, so the source is going to be sales, comma, finance, comma, and that's it, isn't it? Just 2. Don't want that comma on there then. Okay, so if I change that to finance, there are no sales reps in finance. But if I go manager, there is 1. If I go assistant, there is 2 in the finance. So that's basically how COUNTIFs work. So that was a very quick look at some of what I consider some of the most useful functions. Obviously you've got the basic functions that most people would use in Excel, these average, max, min functions, and then more functions. But these sum functions, SUMIF functions, SUMIFs, count, COUNTIF and COUNTIFs functions are very, very useful. And obviously you've seen me use name ranges there, and the purpose of that and the benefit of that when you're copying it across. And also data validation, we've used that quite a lot. So hopefully this has been a good insight into some of the best things you can do in Excel when you're fairly new at it, and get you going using Excel and getting some benefit from it. So hopefully it's been of use to you. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.